And live from the Scheinfeld Center Innovator Studio at Santa Barbara City College, it's the Enlightened Entrepreneur Podcast, where we inform and inspire Gen Z to become even more entrepreneurial and innovative in our global economy. I'm your host, Julie Sampson, Director of the Scheinfeld Center. Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to have you here for the sixth podcast in a series of 7 that focuses on helping you avoid areas where aspiring entrepreneurs can typically get stuck when they're bringing a product or service to market. And this is the kind of thing we do here every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, helping each other create livelihoods that matter, be your own boss, and make the world an even better place. So we hope that you'll come together, grow with our community. You can help us by liking, sharing, subscribing, and join in on the live chat and comment because we really want to get to know you. With that, let's get to it. In our first 5 podcasts in this series, we explored how to come up with business ideas, test them, how to prototype, and we looked at the stages of manufacturing and funding. We're going to take that a step further in this video with a deeper dive into manufacturing and funding, adding how venture capital can come into the funding mix. This combination of working out your manufacturing and your funding is super critical. It's a point of potential failure for startups because there's so much complexity. You're trying to get your funding together. You're trying to work out your manufacturing to meet your demand, and you're trying to build a customer base for the market. And so how do you manage all of that as an entrepreneur? Well, joining us to break it down is SBCC Scheinfeld Center alumnus, inventor, and career entrepreneur, Robert Herr. In 2016, he launched his first company, FuelBox, providing charging solutions that keep your mobile devices charged when you're on the go. His passion for innovative product design has kept him focused on developing technology for first responders, military, and consumers alike, leading to his launch of another startup, Bunker, which provides on-body field equipment that enables first responders and military operators to excel in their day-to-day roles. Robert is also a startup consultant for several new businesses in Santa Barbara and LA. Robert, welcome to our podcast. It's so great to have you with us.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, it's super fun that you have entrepreneurial roots here at Santa Barbara City College and the Scheinfeld Center going back to 2012. And your list of accomplishments, what you've gained since then, is just so impressive. And I want to congratulate you on your success and also for sharing your time and expertise with us today. It's awesome.
Thanks so much. No, I'm happy to share. It's a pleasure to be here and be able to share what I've been through to hopefully help some of the next generation of entrepreneurs have a little easier route.
Let's, for our listeners who are unfamiliar, could you describe FuelBox and your flagship product, which was the ultimate charging solution?
That's right. Yeah. So the original concept, while we were at the Scheinfeld Center, actually, was to build in an iPhone cable into your outlet, so you just couldn't lose your phone charger. We were at college, we were losing our phone chargers, and $30 was a lot to us at the time. So we wanted one to just stay right there in the outlet and extend out when you needed it and retract right back in when you didn't. So that was the original concept that we came up with while we were at the Scheinfeld Center. As most things do, it evolved when you really start doing your research and seeing what else is out there and kind of tinkering and whatnot. And it became a 2-part system that was actually a plug and play product. So this is the ultimate charging solution that we ended up coming up with. And it was years of iterations. We thought it was going to be done in 6 months. It took several years. So we'll get more into that, but it's a 2-part system, plugs directly into your outlet, into any standard outlet. It still has 2 outlets and it has the cables built in for iPhone and Android devices. So that just wraps around. And then on top, it's a portable battery. And this has about 2 phone charges worth of battery capacity, and it has the cables built in as well. So this is kind of a grab and go off the top of the docking station that stays in your outlet. So you have the cables always there, kitchen countertop outlets, great place to have it. And then you have your grab and go battery pack.
What a complex product. I mean, in order to bring that to market, you had to, because it's an electrical product, you had to go through certifications, plus there are the cable connectors, to connect with different devices. You had to deal with the charging capability and also the design of the unit itself. So all of that is a super big handful. In terms of product design, how did you go through all of those steps? Like, what was the sequence of steps that you went through in order to go through that initial concept to the market-ready product?
Yeah, so I'm not an engineer by trade. I'm not a designer by trade, but I'm curious and I'm willing to try things that I don't know. So really, you kind of start with tinkering as much as you can. We took apart an outlet right in our house. We went to the hardware store. We got all the outlet pieces. We really started kind of just tinkering with what we could. And then the next step was to work with an engineer, someone that has expertise in designing and developing these types of products. So, we took it as far as we could with sketches and outlining all the specifications and doing as much Googling as possible. And then we finally were connected with through the city college, we were connected with an engineer that was willing to help us out to take to the next step. So that would be computer renderings, right? And moving into like the mechanics of it and understanding the exact electrical specifications and things like that. So that the first step always starts with you doing as much research as you can, as much R&D as you possibly can, and then finding someone with a little bit more expertise to help guide you through the next steps. When you're a first-time entrepreneur in general, you end up wearing a lot of hats. You have to do a lot of things all at once, and you're trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. With a consumer electronics product, there's extra layers of complexity that I wouldn't necessarily recommend for a first-time entrepreneur unless you really want to suffer for the first couple years, because like you said, the UL or ETL certifications, which are the safety labs that have to approve this different type of electronics, working with Apple to use their components, their connectors, and all those different aspects of it just add layers of complexity. So if you're doing something in textiles or just a phone case or a novel type of mug or something like that, it's a little bit easier it's a little bit shorter of a time frame for learning how to go from prototype to mass production. In our case, we had to go through almost 2 years of just prototyping and design work, and that was just to get prototypes done, not to get into tooling and mass production. And it was, it's a blessing in disguise, because once you go through everything and you start to get to know all these different players, all these different people, you end up being able to shorten that lead time. And now we can do something within 6 months. But originally it took us several years because we didn't know how to do it. So in hindsight, it's worth it to kind of struggle to learn the industry. But at the same time, I recommend baby steps and starting with products that are not so complex, ideally. But yeah, so our kind of journey was, once we worked with just kind of a local consultant engineer, we got it to the next stage. And I worked with met a mentor who had contacts in Taiwan, and he had 2 engineers on staff, and they got us to our first prototype. And that prototype was so far from what you see today. I mean, we went through probably 25 different prototypes before we actually got to a final design, and then you go into mass production. Then you go into the tooling and all those things like that. So yeah, it was all in. It probably took us 3.5 to 4 years, which is way too long, but we stuck with it and finally got into production. And along that, way, we'll get into this also, but having to raise money and having to figure out how to pay for all of these things, because the further you get with just the consultant engineer, a few $100 to a few $1,000, and you go up to the contract manufacturer engineers, you're talking a few $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars. And then when you're going into mass production, you're talking tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. So that's kind of the chunks of capital that it requires to make those steps. And you need to make sure that you're going to have a market for your product. So there are a lot of different ways to test that, and we can get into that also.
That's fantastic. Thank you for giving us the overview of that process. And, the level of commitment that it would require, for you to navigate through those 4 years and all the ups and downs. Like, what was it that you saw? Like, how were you so committed, knowing that absolutely this is a widespread problem and absolutely people are needing this and we're continuing with it?
So it was a problem that we experienced personally, consistently, so that we knew the problem was not being addressed the whole time we were doing it. And if there was a perfect solution for it that came out while we were developing it, we may have thrown our hands up and said, all right, they solved the problem, we don't need to worry about it. But there wasn't. So there was still the motivation to solve the problem the whole time. And we felt like there was an opportunity, and it's fairly easy to understand if people are willing to pay for it, pre-orders, campaigns, and people are like, hey, I'd love to buy that, then it's encouraging to continue. If people are kind of advising you to, hey, maybe you should think about this or that or the other thing, maybe you should take a harder look at your product and see if this is something that's really going to be, sustainable economically, and make sure that you're going to make enough money to live off it. So on top of that, entrepreneurs have to have, I think the key characteristic of an entrepreneur is persistence. If you don't have persistence in your blood, it's going to be a rough go, because it's just hard. It's hard to raise money. It's hard to do something, hard to forge your own path. Every aspect of the process of developing something from scratch is challenging, and it doesn't happen quickly. So you have to stay persistent. And if you're willing to do that, then you've got a shot.
You mentioned that you connected with Taiwan. So is that where the location where you ultimately decided to manufacture?
Nope, that was actually just step 3. So we, after we worked with the group out of Taiwan, with the mentor who was local here in Santa Barbara, and that was his team, very helpful. We started getting connected to other groups, other mentors, and other manufacturing companies that said they could do everything for us, just X amount of dollars, and they'll make our dreams come true. That's never the case. So we ended up working with another team that was a big distributor that was also had their hands in manufacturing. And they said, for, I think it was $20,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, they could help us get all the way from where we were, which was just basic schematics and prototypes, to design for manufacturing. So design for manufacturing, DFM, is the kind of the final design that you can actually produce on a mass scale. That's thought through all of the production line, assembly line, all of the different component development and things like that. It's not just putting together, 1 or 2 or 3 of these things with 3D printers and things like that. So from getting to just, basic design through prototyping and testing into design for manufacturing, that was a long process. And anyhow, we ended up working with that group for a while. We realized that we were the small fish in the big pond, and we didn't get the attention that we thought we were going to get, and ended up getting at the next level of schematics, the next little bit closer to design for manufacturing, but not quite. So I ended up connecting with a mentor who told me that I need to go to the source. So I went to the Hong Kong Electronics Show. The Hong Kong Electronics Show is where every manufacturer and consumer electronics meet every year. And so no matter what type of electronics product you're into, they'll be at the Hong Kong Electronics Show. And so I went there, met the mentor who was from, and it was Ram Merritt. He's from the Pismo area. And he kind of walked the floors with me and helped introduce me to some different people, and met a couple manufacturers that wanted to kind of work with us. So we then, the next week after the electronics show was over, took the ferry into Shenzhen, China, which is the hub of consumer electronics manufacturing. That's where Dongguan and Shenzhen, that's where it's all happening for our industry. So I toured manufacturing facilities. I got to know people. It was quite the experience, and that was my first toe dip into the industry. And partnered with another group, and we got to design for manufacturing stage with them after not too long. And then we ended up pivoting to another manufacturing partner after that, and before we finally got actually into production. So there was just, I mean, lots of pivots, lots of adjustments along the way. And you never know what's going to be the kind of stop that you run into, but you got to figure a way out around it. If the price was too high with that group, so we ended up having to go find another group and use the renderings and the schematics that we had to take it to another group, and then we finally got it done.
So it sounds like really connecting with the right mentors was really key in helping you navigate that whole thing.
Absolutely. No, mentors are invaluable in any business you want to start. Try to learn from people that have done it, and they'll save you a lot of time and money. So like now, if someone has a consumer electronics product that they want to work on, they don't have to go through all those different steps. I have contacts that I can share with you that'll make things a lot easier, that took years to really vet and get through. And that's why, from a consultant standpoint, I have value, because it took years and years and years to figure out who's good at what they do and who's just, talking. So yeah, work with mentors seek out mentors before you even seek out, the actual manufacturing partners and things like that, because you need somebody that's been through it to help guide you. Otherwise, it's just a little bit more painful.
Yes, for sure. That's such great advice, Robert. So, with all of those people that you worked with, and you have this really innovative design, and increasingly innovative as you went along, how did you manage your intellectual property through that whole thing?
So originally we were with a firm that was out of the city college, and they were helpful to get our first patent pending. And then so the other thing about being an entrepreneur and first-time entrepreneur is networking is key, and go to as many events as possible and leave with as many business cards as you can get. We used to have a competition on who could get the most business cards and really use them, catalog them, put them in an Excel sheet. That's gold. Those people are gold. You never know who's going to be an investor or a partner or a supplier for you or a customer. So there's the networking is so key with anything that you're starting. So through that process, we ended up getting connected to SoCal IP, Steve Saraboff and his team, and they helped us really navigate a lot of the IP challenges so smoothly. And so getting connected to the right IP attorneys that are really willing to work with you, that was very helpful for us. And at first we had a good enough IP attorney, but they just didn't give us as much guidance as Steve and his team did. And we just met them through good old fashioned networking.
So with all of this that you've talked about and these years that you went through this, there's the funding. I mean, not only did you have to fund this entire process, but also you and your co-founder needed to live, right? So can you walk us through the steps and the stages that you went through with your funding so that we can get an idea how it all works?
If you don't have a lot of money to begin with, it's quite challenging, right? But here's the process. So you scrape together as much money as you possibly can between you and your partners, right? I recommend working with partners if you can, just because it keeps you going, it keeps you motivated. If you're looking for partners, I recommend partnering with people that have different skill sets than you, so you can bring a more dynamic set of value to the table. But the more partners you have at the beginning, and partnerships are always challenging, and there's always kind of falling in and falling out, new partners, old partners, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just so key. You look at all the big major successes in entrepreneurship, and there's always partners. You got to have support, and it's really key. But so first, you scrape together as much money as you can. I think we had $700 between the two of my co-founder and I. Started an account, and that was what we got started with. The next step is family and friends. Kick in as much money as you can. My uncle at the time helped us put together a basic equity structure. So he said, just say that your idea is worth $1 million, and you're going to incorporate with 1 million shares, and you can sell $1 a share, right? So go try to sell shares for $1, and make it a minimum of $5,000, $5,000 investment. So that was kind of helpful, and we were able to get a few family and friends to invest. I think we raised about $20,000 to $30,000 that way. So that was the family and friends round. After you scrape as much together on your own as you can, if you have a part-time job, then the next step is family and friends. And hopefully you make enough progress to show that you're building value. And then the next stage after family and friends would be to raise money from strangers that are called angel investors. And those are anywhere from 5, 10, 25,000 to 500,000, $1 million even. So that's kind of your angel round. And you're not going to raise money from angels without proving that you have something. It's not just a matter of this could be something. Generally, it's like, okay, this is going to be something. So we started really doing well raising angel capital once we did a crowdfunding campaign. So crowdfunding is key, especially if you have a tangible product. Software can work sometimes too, but generally with a product that you can hold, touch, use, it's kind of novel and nifty, and it's a good gift. Crowdfunding is a great way to go. So we did a crowdfunding campaign and tried to raise $50,000, and we ended up raising $75,000 over a 30-day time frame. Crowdfunding's amazing. Crowdfunding's really amazing. It's hard work. It doesn't happen. It doesn't go viral. Don't expect it to go viral instantly. You got to really hit the phones and try to get as much publicity and as many emails blasted for your link to get eyeballs on your crowdfunding campaign. And so it's hard work. You want to have a good video. You want to have good perks. So you want to put really good discounts on your perks. Perks are basically what they call the different packages that people can buy on crowdfunding campaigns. So we did a crowdfunding campaign, and we exceeded our goal. It made it a little easier to raise money, and I think we raised maybe $100,000 or $150,000 after we did that $70,000. So that got us through to the next stages of the product development. And then when you get into that stage, you're able to pay yourself a little bit to survive, but generally, you either choose the route of suffering and just sacrificing and eating ramen and pitching a tent in your friend's backyard and doing whatever you got to do to kind of squeeze every dollar, or you have a part-time job to meet your basic needs. And I highly recommend having a part-time job to meet your basic needs and kind of do things in parallel, because I think like the biggest lie told to entrepreneurs is that you have to suffer in order to succeed. And that's a dangerous mind frame. You can get stuck in that mind frame, and you can kind of create self-limiting beliefs, and it's challenging. So I think that an important piece of advice that I didn't get early enough was that taking care of yourself, your health, and your relationships needs to come before making money with your new concept. And it's not talked about enough in entrepreneurship. Like, you should really eat well and really exercise and really actually think about your body. I know it's hard to do in your 20s or late teens, 20s, but you'll be thanking yourself if you actually focus on your mental health and your physical health and your relationships, and then also working on your business concept. But having a part-time job and having some income or some family support that can offset that is my number one piece of advice. Like, definitely do that, just because even if you go that route where like I did and pitch a tent in your co-founder's backyard and just grind it out, sometimes it takes a lot longer because you're not as healthy, you're not as sharp, you're not as on top of it. So you end up dragging it out a lot longer, and then it just becomes a more unhealthy process. So I really recommend, kind of a little bit of a life work balance, even when you are totally consumed by it. You want to make it happen and you're going to push it really hard. So yeah, that's kind of something I recommend, is just to keep yourself sane and healthy, and make sure your business is going to succeed. Yeah. So then after the angel rounds, and we were able to get to market. And when you're able to get to your product actually into sales, ideally you don't have to raise $1. If you can, you like Gene Montesano started Lefty's Jeans. He's got a great story. So him and his buddy scraped together as much money as they can, right? They were on that stage and they bought jeans, they acid washed them, but they put bleach and took them to a laundry mat and acid washed them and sold them and made a profit. And some of the best stories start like that. You don't have to raise money. You're only raising money. You want to raise money from a position of power. So ideally you're already selling a product. And if you can't sell a product, you can do crowdfunding, and you might have to raise a little money and raise as much money as you need, and do it through the steps like I told you. Scrape together as much as you can, ask your friends and family, go to the angel rounds, and then maybe venture capital. But venture capital always works best if they come to you. And same thing with angels, really. You don't even really want to pitch people. I mean, I pitched so many people, so many more people that I never got $1 from. And generally people that invested in us is because they recognized that we were onto something, and they came to us and said, oh, this is really cool. Or we were asking them for advice. Another really good piece of advice is just try to get mentors, try to get advisors. And those are the people that end up investing in you, because they see the progress you're making, versus you going out with a hat and saying, hey, give me $100,000. I promise it's going to be worth $1 billion, So it's just, it's just work on the product, focus on the product, and try to get to sales as fast as possible, and focus on your customers as much as you can, because you fall in love with your product and you think it's just going to sell itself. It doesn't. It never does. So you want to focus on your customers and say, is this actually something you're going to pay for? What do I need to do in order to get you to pay for it? And then be sales driven, and let that lead your product development. Let that lead your capital raise, things like that. Let those sales opportunities drive your fundraising. So now I pretty much only work in the capacity of, I'm only going to raise money if I already have a sale lined up, so I know exactly how long it's going to take for this investor to get a return on their investment, or with, of course, some insurance of timeframes. Things happen, but with that just total blind, like, oh, I don't know, we'll give it our best. It's just it's not a strong position to raise money from, and you're going to end up spinning your wheels a lot of the time.
Such great advice all along the way there. Yeah, being in that position of power, being attuned, and really doing customer-centric product development, really work together to strengthen your position, it sounds like.
Yeah, and having self-awareness, and making sure that you don't sound desperate, because if you sound desperate at all, you're not going to get a dime.
Desperation doesn't really do favors anywhere in life, I don't think.
No, it's true. One other thing on fundraising, now that we're on the topic, is that it's actually you'll find, at least I found that I got pretty good at getting people interested and saying, yeah, I'd love to invest in that, or I'd love to hear more and stuff. But then you email them and they don't respond. And then you email them again and they don't respond. And you call them and they say, oh yeah, I remember you. Yeah, this is really cool. Send me an email. I emailed you twice, but send me another one. All right. It's 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times. I mean, like, there's a famous story of Steve Jobs calling an investor 35 times until he returned. He finally invested. I mean, 35 times. Can you like imagine calling someone 35 times? That's you got to take a lot of rejection. So persistence, follow up. I mean, that Shawshank Redemption is a great example of this. Andy, he's trying to get books for the library. He writes a letter once a week for like 3 years, and then finally they send him books. Then he started writing twice a week, and then they end up sending him more books. It's just that persistence and the follow up is how you raise money. That's how you get. It's how you get by. It's how you make it.
Have your sales changed since the pandemic started?
So this was for Fuelbox. Let's see. Right, this is our 8th year, and it's been a wild ride. I mean, totally wild ride. And yes, the pandemic has been devastating. So we've had to adjust big time. And I've gone on to different things. And so I'm managing multiple companies now and, consulting and doing all different types of things. So personally, I've had to adjust a ton. So a little bit about our sales kind of journey with Fuelbox. We were naive and thought it was going to sell itself like crazy, and it didn't. So we were doing online and it was just too slow. It wasn't sustainable. And then we got introduced to a gentleman who was in the hospitality industry. So doing stuff for like Wyndham Hotel Group, like this one, you got to put like gifting and things like that. And that ended up being a pretty successful channel for us. So we shifted more of our focus from, one sales one at a time on Amazon and on Shopify and online to more group sales, 100, 500, 1,000 at a time to hotel groups and different companies and things like that. And so that ended up growing quite well. And then that was okay. That worked out pretty well. That was definitely one of our main our sales drivers. And then we got introduced to the government side of things and got introduced to public sector work. And we started doing different projects for hurricane relief. And that introduced us to different folks within the public sector, which was really good. And that was great for our best year. Last year, 2019 was our best year. And then the pandemic hit and everything got shot. So yeah, but also, it's been a very tough year. We got a loan. We got an economic impact disaster loan from the Small Business Association that was very helpful, and that's kept us alive. And things have been kind of on pause. And next year the outlook's pretty decent for next year for Fuelbox. But I've also started another company that where we do personal protective equipment, and we do accessories, on-body accessories for Department of Homeland Security and the military, Department of Defense. And so that's been a different world for me, and that's been a whole new venture. That's about a year old, and that's getting off the ground, and that's exciting. So I think the other thing about being an entrepreneur is you have to have multiple lines in the water. Dan Engel, who was an advisor of ours, he started a company, Fast Spring was the name of his company. It started here. But while he was starting Fast Spring, which is now it's quite a successful company, he had like 4 or 5 other businesses going at the same time, and they ended up dying, and Fast Spring took off. So trying to, focus on the customers. And if something's really not working and you're working at it for 6 months, kill it. It's hard to do. It's super hard to do, but it's important, especially when something like COVID comes around, and you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to adapt. And so that's what we're doing. They definitely were affected this year, and we're hoping that next year things are starting to come back online for purchasing and planning for next year. So our outlook is good, but it changed a lot. As your company grows and you go through different stages of funding and have different investors and different plans and agendas, you kind of look for an exit strategy. Either someone buys you, or you get a big round of investment so you can scale the company, or you look to go public or something like that. So we went through a process where we had a private company that was interested in buying us. This was in 2017, and I went all in on that. I mean, I was totally all in on that because it was a big number. Things were exciting. It was it would have been a win for all of our investors, for all of us personally. And so I went all in on that, and And that's something that you come across as a new entrepreneur, is different people and different exit strategies, different opportunities to actually make real money, which is why you get in the first place, right? You want to try to have a big win and sustain yourself and your family for years to come. So we actually were successful in being acquired by this company, a private company. It's about a 10-month process from when they first showed interest to actually getting a signed purchase agreement done, and it was totally done, which was gonna be really great. And all these really cool people were coming to the table. We were gonna have lots of great employees. We're gonna run as a private division of this new company. And then after all was said and done, and we had the signing party and things looked great, the money never showed up, and it was just like devastating. I mean, it was like an implosion. We'd zeroed out our bank accounts. Like, we were totally all in on this. Like, it was like a whole thing. And so after that, survival after that, it was like the Wild West. We had to try to figure out how to adapt and change in all types of things. And it was really hard, fractured our team. And that was kind of the beginning of the end, in a way. Although the company's still alive, it's not kind of on a big trajectory to succeeding, to a large scale anymore. Now it's more of sustaining and trying to get a return for our investors and things like that. But it's not a big team anymore. It's all, it's totally changed. So those types of events can completely change your company, like it did with Fuelbox. And so we're still to this day trying to adapt and change and figure out how to make it work. But that was a major learning lesson. When someone comes along to buy you, that's a whole new set of learning that different than raising money. So that was quite the experience.
Wow. Thank you so much, Robert, for sharing all of your insight and your experience. We could go on, and actually we've kind of gone over a little, but it's so worth it. Thank you so much for all that you shared. And I hope you'll come back another time so that we can continue the conversation. It would be fantastic.
Certainly, I'd be happy to.
I know that people would like to know what's the best way to follow you, to get their hands on their own Fuelbox, to connect with you. What's the best way for people to do that? Yeah,
just through our website, myfuelbox.com, or bunkersupply.us. Those are both good ways to get a hold of us. We have Instagram and things like that also. So
excellent, great. I'll put those links down below in the description. And for our audience, I hope that this discussion helps you on your entrepreneurial journey, manufacture and fund your own products. And I'd like to invite you to tune in next Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, where we have a special edition of the Enlightened Entrepreneur podcast. It's actually a part of Global Entrepreneurship Week. We're joining over 170 countries and 35,000 events worldwide, all dedicated to removing barriers and welcoming everyone to entrepreneurship. Our panel of Gen Z guests span several continents, and we're going to compare ecosystems and issues of inclusion and best practices for startup success. It'll be a really awesome episode, so I hope you'll join us. And until then, please share, like, and subscribe, and invite others to join us too, because we're better and stronger together. Have a great week, everyone. Stay strong and keep on bringing great ideas to life. And thank you again, Robert.
Thank you.